We are in the midst of an era in which it is illegal in many parts of the country to go to church. Most recently, Ontario has joined this list with an order put in place at 12:01 a.m. on Boxing Day, December 26th, restricting church capacity to just 10 people, irrespective of the size of the church. It could be a mammoth Costco-sized mega church. Nope, 10 people. It could be a tiny little church that could only fit 10 people, and well, that one's also capped at 10 people for bizarre reasons, which kind of proves that this restriction is a lot more about theatrics than it is about bona fide health guidance. Let's talk about this though, because churches are already facing charges for daring to gather together as they always have for years in a country that guarantees freedom of religion. A pastor in Windsor, Ontario of the Harvest Bible Church, Pastor Aaron Rock, was charged for having a service on December 20th. Now, Windsor had a lockdown order in place before the province-wide one, and he was charged, and the church was actually ordered closed on Christmas Eve. Police made sure that no one could even get into the church parking lot to have a service on Christmas Eve to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. And then the Church of God in Aylmer, Ontario, a church we've covered in the past, was charged for having a drive-in service on the first Sunday after Christmas, on December 27th. Apparently, police said people were gathering outside of their vehicles, which turned this drive-in service that would actually have otherwise been law-abiding, because the law specifically says that drive-ins are permitted, to be, in the eyes of the police, an illicit drive-in church service. But what's interesting here, if you look at the press release from the police in Aylmer, Ontario, who laid the charge, there was actually a pro-mask protest, a protest against the church taking place just a stone's throw away, which police did not charge anyone over. Here's what the press release said. At the same time, officers located numerous vehicles parked along the roadway that were peacefully demonstrating and protesting in support of the wearing of masks. Due to safety concerns and roadway congestion, police moved along 15 to 20 vehicles. So if you're having church, that's not allowed, but if you're protesting against the church, that's completely fine. In fact, it reminds us of the old Black Lives Matter protest from earlier in 2020, in which we saw that virus transmission actually depends on the moral worthiness of the cause being protested. That was a really good scientific achievement there, understanding that what you're protesting actually changes epidemiology. Funny how that works out. So here we are in a situation where people of faith have once again been forced to partake in their services virtually or in the parking lot, which, let me tell you, in Canada in January is not going to be all that fun, especially if you're in parts of the country that have idling bylaws, which I believe still exist a fair bit with frequency. So what do we do here? A lot of people are now really split into two camps, and I've heard this in emails when I've covered these things previously. From people on one hand that say, you know what, no more lockdowns, this is awful. And people, on the other hand, who really identify as those traditional law and order conservatives, people who would say, oh, well, if the law says you can't do it, you can't do it. I'm not encouraging anyone to break a law. I'm going to let people make decisions for themselves about what they want to do. I will say that I support the challenges of these laws that are taking place. I believe that the courts very much need to hear this, and I noted that just before Christmas, there was an injunction hearing that was ultimately turned down. It was denied by a church in Toronto that was trying to get an injunction to be allowed to have its Christmas services, and the judge ruled. The judge ruled that, yes, there would be irreparable harm because you can only have one Christmas service, and once Christmas passes, you can't remedy that again. But the judge also found that the risk would be too high from a public health perspective, so therefore she did not grant it, although the case can continue to go, and they may well emerge victorious in the end. We just don't know yet. But right now, we have churches that have been told, and all institutions of faith, that they have to, for 4 weeks, go back to not having a gathering, to not gathering in person, to not worship in person. And we know that from history, 4 weeks can very easily turn into 6, 8, 12 weeks. We are already right now in, month 10 of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So if people are just trying to get over the hurdle of, well, it's just, a limited period of time, that shouldn't be the rationale that causes them to go along with this. But people of faith who are speaking out against this are being maligned in the media. They're called anti-maskers, they're called COVID hoaxers, COVID truthers, and all of these names, when in actuality, they want to embrace the science. They want to embrace the science. Take a look at what Pastor Aaron Rock said of the Harvest Bible Church in Windsor. He said, "I'm not a virus denier. I'm not an anti-masker. I'm not a foolish man. I'm doing this for the sake of the community." And what people of faith understand is that churches are essential, and churches serve an essential need in a similar way to grocery stores, although it's a need that manifests itself in a different way. It's not a tangible need. But for those who go there, it is very much essential. And this is why the approach in Alberta, which I know a lot of people who are very much anti-lockdown don't appreciate, but the approach in Alberta is vastly superior to the approach in Manitoba or Ontario, because what the Alberta government did was understand that, you know what, if a grocery store can open with limited capacity, if a retail outlet can open with limited capacity, so too can a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a Buddhist temple, a gurdwara, whatever the case may be. Where is that nuance and where is that understanding and where is that evidence in Ontario? It just doesn't exist right now. When you can have a jam-packed grocery store with people bumping into each other, you can have a fully stocked flight, a commercial flight on Air Canada or WestJet with every seat filled, but you can't have people sitting in a pew, socially distanced at limited capacity. Clearly what's happening is places of worship are being targeted. And interestingly enough, a lot of people have been sharing a section of the criminal code that actually makes it a criminal offense to arrest a clergyman. Isn't this kind of interesting here, that you cannot arrest a clergyman under a civil process or under the pretense of executing a civil process, and also it is an offense to obstruct or disturb religious worship or religious meetings in any form. So what we have here is actually a legal protection for worship in the Constitution and in the criminal code, yet still churches are being scapegoated and unfairly targeted as being the purveyors of COVID-19 spread, when in actuality it's household gatherings, private events, things that aren't really enforceable or enforced that are causing the problems. So I'll continue to stand up for religious freedom, and I hope that all people, even those who aren't religious, do as well. Because when the government is going after places of worship, it isn't just about going after people of faith. It's actually about denying the science that they claim is guiding every step of their response to the pandemic. For True North, I'm Andrew Lawton.